You're watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.
It's beginning to look a lot like EJ's in another hotel room. It's EJ Hradek, Dan O'Toole.
Yes.
EJ, so you're there work reasons. You're in a hotel room. Now,
Yeah.
are you the same as me? When you enter a hotel and you stay in hotels enough, you're like, I could definitely be like a anonymous detail checker for hotels. I'd be good at that. Does that enter your brain?
You know, I have thought in the past that if I wasn't in the business I was in, maybe I could be in hotel design, because you stay in enough hotels, you're like, why are the electrical outlets over here? They need to be over here. Why is, this here and not here? So yes, and I guess in some way I am similar in that regard. As I look around, and it's very frustrating when you go to a hotel that's not laid out right and you got challenges. You can't have that cord charging your phone from a mile away. So
where hotels really got screwed was when they all made the for the first ever like iPhone where you could dock your iPhone, and they changed that like a year after that, and every hotel's like, wait, but we designed our entire bedside table around this.
Yeah. There are some strange setups that come with hotels, but you're right. I do look around, and some are laid out better than others. It's nice when I can go into one where things are just right. Everything's where I want it, which is nice.
Hockey players know hotel rooms very well, and their lives are always seen as glamorous. But if you talk to them and away from the cameras and stuff, they're like, yeah, we don't see cities. We see the inside of a hotel room and a hockey rink.
Yeah.
So they could also join our club of inspecting hotels.
There's one difference, though, Dan. You and I, the Marriott, the Sheraton, or whatever, the Hilton, we're not at the Four Seasons.
No.
Most times. I mean, you're a big hitter, so maybe you're there in that club. I, on the other hand, I am at the, the 4 Points or wherever I may land. But those guys, they do okay. I mean, they're in some nice hotels.
And they don't have roommates anymore.
Yeah.
They all get their own rooms, right?
I'm not 100% sure if they all get their own rooms, but I think you're right. I think most of them do. I've had these conversations with guys that come through and work with us at NHL Network. And there are some funny stories about different roommates and the way they kind of operated, and being a roommate with Scott Stevens, for example, for young players on the Devils, you were intimidated. So Scott was in charge. You did whatever. If he shut the TV off at 8:30 at night, it was over for the night. But there's some crazy stories about some of these guys. May make for a good book. Who knows? But I think they got it all to themselves now.
We'll get to the Leafs and a big trade rumor in a second. But further to this, and have you ever asked NHL players that you've ran into how they are able to get to sleep at night after a game? You've played in front of 18,000 fans. You may have scored the overtime winner. You may have gone to a shootout. Whatever happened in that game. How can you decompress enough to get to bed before 5 a.m.?
Yeah, I should ask him that, because I can't get to sleep after a men's league game. So I mean, believe me, nothing is really going on. But I should ask that question. I would imagine there might be some of these guys who are medicated. I mean, there are sleep aids that people take, and they have to be on such a strict schedule, right? Like, it's frustrating enough for me on nights, and as you get older, I find you don't sleep as well, and it's harder sometimes to fall asleep. These guys are on a regimented schedule where, the next day they have to be somewhere early in the morning, or so they have to try to get as much sleep as they can. I know the teams spend a lot of time and effort in discussing their travel based around sleep now. So that's a thing in sports science. But I'll tell you, it's got to be challenging. And then like you say, you're flying, or your life could be screwed up. So that's a good topic. I should start asking guys that.
Do they still have those sleep scientists? Because I remember probably about 10 years ago, it was big news when the Canucks brought in this like scientist to tell them, okay, you should be leaving after the game in this city. You should be staying over in this city.
Yeah, they still have it. They still have. I mean,
Okay.
the Florida Panthers last year during the Cup final. Remember that was that long trip between Edmonton and Florida, and that's during a final where you have days off in between. They did a lot of their scheduling based on what their sports scientists told them within their group, and I'd imagine I think it's prevalent in all the sports now, especially sports like hockey and basketball, where you're traveling, every other day kind of.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I mentioned we get to the trade rumor.
All right.
This is a big one.
You got some stuff here, huh?
Jacob Trouba being looked at as a before deadline acquisition by the Toronto Maple Leafs with a massive caveat. That is, he's got a lot of money left on 1 year left on his deal after this year.
Yeah, see, that's a pretty big caveat because he does have another year after this one. I believe it's $8 million. Now, obviously, if the Leafs are going to do that, Anaheim's going to take half the money, right? So it's really, you're looking at whatever the prorated $4 million is this year, and $4 million next year. Jacob at $8 million, high in your lineup, not really a lot of value. Jacob at half that, lower in your lineup, as a physical right shot guy on your blue line in the playoffs. Might be more worth it for you. And now you have Tanev on that right side. They could add. I mean, I think that's where the Leafs are going, is looking to add, like most teams. You never have enough defensemen. So I would say there's some sense to it, but Anaheim has to eat half, and then they probably have to take something back to make it even more financially worthwhile, because even at $4 million, I guess the cap's going up next year, so maybe that's the calculation as well. You could fit him at $4 million as a back end, more of a back end defender, second pair, third pair, right shot guy, more of a value. So I guess we'll see if that plays out. But I think there's going to be interest in Trouba. The question will be, he didn't want to, there were certain teams he didn't want to go to begin with, right? So he ends up going to Anaheim now. Is he amenable to picking up again? Now, I don't think that those trade restrictions travel when you get traded. I'm not 100% sure on that, but, I'm sure that if the Ducks are thinking about doing something like this, it has to work for everybody. So it'd be interesting to see where he would want to go. But I think there's going to be teams at half price with the cap going up next year. You're trying to win a Stanley Cup, big, strong, right shot defenseman, help you in certain situations, might be worthwhile.
But there's also something for if it's not broke, don't fix it.
100%.
But with the front offices and all these teams now, there's a department that has looked at the last 20 Stanley Cup winners. Okay, how many moves did these guys make? Even though things were going well, did they still tinker? So they're breaking down every aspect of, okay, should we make a move even though things are going very well?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that you try to fix the problems you have, and this is a long process. The season. I mean, we've had these discussions now for a couple of months as the Leafs have moved through the season. It's been a really interesting season. It's been a good season for them. They're transitioning to something a little different. I think something that could really pay dividends in the spring. But they'll see where they're at. They'll see where their injuries are at. They'll see what the cost of acquisition is. Obviously, I think if you're bringing Jacob Trouba to be a first pair guy, I don't think you're going very far at this stage of the game. If you're bringing Jacob Trouba in to be a kind of a back end defenseman, another depth guy, another guy that can play minutes in situations where you're defending or killing penalties, or you think you need a little more physicality in a league where the playoffs are kind of different, right, than the regular season. You probably have to. You're probably looking, if you're Toronto, is like, we got to go through Florida at some point. So we want to be able to match the way they play physically. And so he would be a helpful guy maybe if all those things we talk about work out. But, again, if you're trying to change the front end of your group, if you're trying to change your first pair, if you're trying to change, your top line, I think that's where you run into more problems because, as you said, it's been working really well. The Leafs have been kind of fortunate in an odd way to me, because they've had these injuries and they've been able to look at a lot of different pieces they have within their group to kind of get a feel for where some of these younger guys are at. So I think when we get to the trade deadline, I think they're going to be in a better position maybe to see where things are and what they might need. But I really do, Dan, I really think it's so wide open this year. Listen, we don't know who's going to get hurt. We don't know all that stuff and how things are going to play out in the future. But the goalies are playing well. They don't give you much. Yeah, they had the crazy game against the Devils the other night. The Devils can do that to you. But they ended up winning the game because they still stayed the core, their core playing inside the dots, and the goalie was unbelievable. So, this is a team this year, I think, that could make a real push because I think it is kind of wide open. Florida's got, to me, still the best team in the East. But the Florida Panthers, they've been to the final 2 years ago. They won the Cup last year. They've played a lot of hockey, and they've got some challenges. So, I think it's there this year to make a push. So we'll see what management decides to do. The Trouba thing is interesting.
You mentioned the Devils, and after that game, former Leaf coach, now Devils head coach, Sheldon Keefe said the Toronto Maple Leafs have the best goaltending in the NHL.
Yeah.
Was that said from the heart, or is that gamesmanship by saying, I'm going to put extra pressure on these guys?
That's not said from the heart. Come on. I mean, these coaches, come on. These guys, they're always trying to, put little things out there. And let's face it, Sheldon knows, who he's talking to with the Toronto media. He sees the Leafs as probably a team you got to worry about because listen, do you think Sheldon Keefe wants to see the Leafs in the final this year, the year he leaves? I don't think so. I don't think he can say whatever he wants, and he's obviously very focused on the new job. But I don't think he wants to be sitting there watching the Leafs, do something unbelievable the year after he's gone. So yeah, I think there's this team got. Let's face it, in that game, Stolarz was great. And it's easy to say, yeah, those guys are good. Look at them. It's an easy thing for a visiting coach or, he's the opposition now. So, yeah, they got the best goaltending in the league. He doesn't care. He thinks, listen, was he going to go into Jacob Markstrom? We stink. These guys are way better. So, he just, that's post game. Your team probably should have won the game. They didn't. The goalie played great. Yeah, they got the best goaltending. Whatever.
He must have had some flashbacks though when the Toronto media he's like, I don't miss this at all.
No, I'm sure he doesn't. I mean, I would say it's probably as dramatic a move as you could make. It's one of them going from
how many would the Devils have at an off day skate? How many reporters would be there?
I would say 3 or 4, maybe. 3 or 4.
And
depends on this time of the year.
Compare that to Toronto, an off-day skate, you'd have, 15 to 20.
Yeah. And you know what? Also, you'd have a bunch of cameras and the sound guys, so there'd be a bigger crowd, right? Just because of that. Where the Devils, you don't have that, so it is definitely a little easier in that regard. But when push comes to shove, if they go to where they want to go down the road, it'll heat up. But yeah, on a day to day, I mean, it must be the coaches can say what they want, but let's face it, they don't ever want to be questioned. I mean, nobody likes to be questioned in life about anything, imagine if we had to every day go out and I decided to stay at this hotel today. I don't know. It was the best deal I could get, and then people start to ask even further, well, why did you go there? And it's just, nobody wants to be questioned. So, for Sheldon, he's in New Jersey. His life is, it's definitely a huge difference from where he was in Toronto when, if he's walking out the back door, he's got 3 guys stopping him. Crazy.
The Leafs are playing the Ducks on Thursday night, tonight. And
Jacob Trouba,
and also, I'm giving you this. Okay. The Ducks might have some extra jump in their step because behind their bench as an assistant coach is former Marley, who was with the Leafs development staff up until last year in Rich Clune. Ooh, so you don't think Clune is telling these guys, hey guys, I joined you guys. Show me I didn't make the wrong choice.
Yeah. And I think, didn't Greg Cronin used to work in Toronto too? I think he was an assistant coach in Toronto several years ago. So
I don't know if coaches are allowed to put money on the board, but there might be some money on the board.
If they're they're not cheap. I think,
Well, I don't know. Maybe it was against PEA I don't know what the rules are.
Put
for
some money on the board. Give the guy. I mean, listen, the Ducks got beaten around by the Senators last night. So they should, do what you can to try to push forward there. But this again, another opportunity for the Leafs. Put another 2 points on the board. I mean, they're looking for a better performance for sure. They got the Ducks here on a second of a back-to-back. The Ducks have been better as a road team this year, and they do have some. They got some young talent within that group, and they've added, obviously, Trouba. They have Gudis, so, you're hoping you come out of the game unscathed physically. But, there's another opportunity to put 2 points up tonight, and it looks like Jake McCabe is getting back in the lineup, so that's good news for the Leafs. And, going back to that Devils game, Dan, it's interesting because they added Domi back in, right? He came back after 8 games out. Their lineup has been kind of fluid lately because guys have been in and out. And I think that was probably part of things for the Leafs in that game is like, when you're putting guys in, sometimes, it changes the dynamic of things. Guys are, trying to find their way back within the group. So sometimes you're just off on that particular day until those guys get better acclimated. So we'll see where they are tonight. But it's another great opportunity. Put those points on the board. You got to beat the Ducks at home, especially when they played last night.
EJ, before you leave, a lot of people doing their holiday shopping, their Christmas shopping.
Yes.
In your travels in the last few weeks, few months, have you found an item where you're like, everyone should know about this? It's not a bad price, and it's going to make whoever you give it to happy. Do you have that item yet? I can tell you the one I found was a digital picture frame for my mom. I'm like, I can't go wrong. All these pictures are stuck on our phones. I'm giving her that.
I actually bought that for my mother years and years ago.
and she doesn't use it.
No, she liked it. She loved it.
Okay.
I mean, she did love it because, again, you're right. We got all these pictures, and they're in our phones, and we don't display them anywhere other than every once in a while, and they pop up, and we go, oh, yeah. You're basically you document your life now with these phones because I have like about 9-10 years worth of pictures in my phone, and I can look back on things. And I do lament that we did not have this when I was a kid, because growing up, I have like a handful of snapshots, and that's it. And I could have had my whole life documented. That at least would be kind of fun to look back at friends and different people over the years. Nothing.
Isn't it crazy? They're like,
nothing.
We have one picture of Grandpa, and here it is. And now we've got 4,000 pictures, and we don't have a physical copy of any of them.
That's right, and many of them. And anytime they could be wiped out. I mean, that's always the biggest fear I have. Whenever I get a new phone, every several years you get a new phone, and it's like, okay, my pictures, don't lose these pictures. And, they come through, but at the end, but you're right. Like, the only time if you're on a plane, you're bored or something, you might scroll through some photographs, but it is nice to have that documentation there of the people in your life, your friends, your family, your children, especially as they, I get a kick out of seeing my, I have a 20-year-old son now. He's like 6'3". He wasn't always 6'3". So it was nice to see him when he was like 3'2", and just looking at him, little Brooksy there, very nice. And now I don't have to look up at him. But yeah,
that's a pretty tall baby, 3'2".
Well, you know what I mean. Like, he's a younger child. Yeah, that would have been a tough one for my wife. That would have been a real. I mean, that would have been earth shattering for her.
So aside from the digital frame, do you have a?
I don't have one this year. I really don't.
Nothing yet. Okay.
No, nothing yet. I mean. But you're right, though. Those things do kind of prop up. For me, what happens is, to get back to your earlier point about sleep, when I can't sleep late at night, these products come into my life via the television. And it's like sometimes they get me. But I don't have anything like that right now, so I'll keep you posted.
That happened to my dad once. He sometimes couldn't sleep at night, and one day the Ginsu knives showed up at our door. He caved.
Hey,
he got them.
He caved. But you know what? The gold Ginsu knives, there is a time you might use them.
Sometimes you need to cut through a Coke can.
That's right. Apparently there is those times. So.
Thanks, EJ.
All right, buddy. See you soon.
Thanks for watching Toronto Sports Rush on the Bet Rivers Network.